Finally, it's time to put my NC1 to the test against some of the other cars I was considering before I bought my 2017 NSX. So this will be the first in a series of videos where I pit my NSX against not only cars that compete with it in terms of price, but just other cars that I was cross-shopping. And I want to see, where does the NSX truly shine? Where could it use improvement? And maybe by the end, I'll have a better idea of whether I actually bought the best car I could have for my use case. So we are currently sitting in a very familiar car. This is a 2015 Porsche 911 991.1 GT3. I've driven this car in the canyons before, compared it against a 991.2 GT3 RS, and the owner Karthik gave me the keys at Sonoma Raceway, where I did a full session and concluded that this was one of the best bone stock cars I've ever driven on track. Not the fastest per se, but just the level of feedback, the razor sharp handling, the amazing 9,000 RPM flat six engine, all of those things were just absolutely outstanding on track. This car is still almost bone stock with the exception of very sticky Nankang CRS tires. But I'm very glad to be starting with this comparison because this GT3 and the NC1 NSX are priced just about the same. Both cars can be found in the $110,000 to $140,000 range on average. This GT3 is more track focused, the NC1 is more street focused. But how do they compare on a canyon road? So let's go through the specs. 3.8 liter flat six naturally aspirated, 475 horsepower, 325 pound-feet of torque. This is a dry sump motor. It's mated to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. There was no manual for this generation. We've got strut front, multi-link rear suspension with adaptive dampers, a valved exhaust, and the 991.1 generation was the first to come with rear axle steering. A huge improvement in handling over the prior 997 generation. This car's turn-in is so much sharper and way less prone to understeer. We're running on the OEM 20-inch forged wheels with 245 front, 305 rear Nankang CRS, and this car weighs about 3,200 pounds. That is about 700 pounds lighter than my NC1. The thing with these GT3s though, is that the .1s have a faulty engine design where the finger followers are prone to failure, and the 10-year warranty that Porsche retrofitted these cars with due to that issue have now mostly expired in 2025. Karthik mentioned this still has the original engine, which is not a G series to my knowledge, so he's got an extended warranty on it. Let's hope nothing happens today. So impressions of the interior, it's typical Porsche GT. It's super high quality. There's a little bit of wear on this Alcantara wrapped steering wheel, and you can tell it's a bit dated. The steering wheel, the shift lever, all of it feels prior generation, but keep in mind, this is a 12-year-old design. For that age, I think this car actually holds up really well in terms of the interior quality, and just visually, it still looks good. We've got the optional carbon bucket seats. The seat is height adjustable electronically, but fore and aft adjustment is manual. So let's get this fired up. We'll leave the suspension in the softer mode, and we'll open up that valved exhaust. Oh my goodness, that engine. It just feels like it wants to rev to the moon. 9,000 RPM redline. Instant throttle response. Super direct steering from this E-Pass. These carbon ceramic brakes don't have a lot of bite. That's one thing I noticed on track as well, but Karthik mentioned that you can actually stand on the pedal basically as hard as you want. That's just how these brakes work in terms of the modulation. Wow. I love the zinginess of this flat six engine. One of the best engines in terms of response and sound and power delivery of any car. The suspension is firm even in the softer mode, but the damping is excellent. Soaks up all the smaller bumps, no problem. It's so sharp. Incredible. Yeah, it's a little bit busy over the bigger bumps. You can use the shift lever as a sequential, which is nice. What What a sound. And it pulls hard. 475 horsepower and not a whole lot of torque, but only 3,200 pound curb weight. I think it's actually slightly less than that. It means this car's acceleration is still impressive in 2025. I actually do wish though there was a little bit more brake bite. It's just slightly unnerving when you're getting pretty deep into the pedal and the car is still not slowing down as hard as you want. So much grip. And let's not forget the rear axle steering here, helping us out big time. It makes a rear engine car feel a lot closer to mid-engine. Minimal understeer on throttle here. I felt it on track, but at canyon speeds, there's basically none. Yeah, so pointy in terms of the front end. The PDK is still super fast, even by modern standards, but you do feel each shift. You feel a slight dip in torque during the upshift. Newer PDKs from the 991.2 and of course the 992 generations do feel a little bit quicker. The steering also very full of feedback for an E-Pass. Not only is it sharp and very precise, it also gives you a good amount of information about the road surface. You can feel the little bumps. It's not 997 hydraulic steering communicative, but for an E-Pass, it's probably one of the very best I've felt. This is just an analog driver's car, even though it doesn't have a manual. I like the fact that I can just keep my hands on the wheel just focus on the other elements of driving versus heel towing. Oh yeah, suspension's a little bit firm there. And we haven't even put it into the stiffer setting yet. Wow. Oh wow. I didn't even open the exhaust valve during that drive. All right, don't worry. We'll do one straight line pull with it fully open. But even with the valve closed, the induction note of this 3.8 liter flat six is just so intoxicating. Let's open this valve up. Ah, there it is. There's that tone. Listen to this. One of the big reasons you'd go with a GT3, the engine. Even though it has the finger follower failure issue, just pony up for the extended warranty and ring this damn thing out to 9,000 RPM, because that is how this car is meant to be enjoyed. Even on the street where you're not even approaching the limits of grip, you can enjoy this engine. This sets the bar so high in this price range. What a car. I'm a little nervous now to be getting into my 700 pound heavier NC1 NSX. But you know what? I will be brutally honest with myself and with you guys if I think I bought the wrong car. Let's see what happens. All right, this will actually be my second ever canyon drive in my 2017 NSX. Before we start though, just want to give a shout out to Detailership. They did full PPF or paint protection film on my car, which not only protects the paint, but also enhances just the pop of this Valencia red paint. And they also did a tinted film over the chrome beak on the front bumper, which I think really enhances the look. Because this was my first ever six-figure car, first modern supercar, by far the most money I've ever spent on a car, I really wanted to protect my investment. If you want to learn a bit more about my thought process and also the process of PPF and what exactly it does, stay tuned until the end of the video. But back to the specs of this NC1. It's powered by a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged dry sump V6, which on its own makes 500 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. Then we have the 3 electric motors, one on each front corner, one on the rear axle for torque fill. Total system peak output, 573 horsepower, 476 torque. So about 100 horsepower more than the GT3 and about 150 pound-feet more. However, 3,900 pounds. That's right. 700 pounds heavier than the GT3. When I did my first Canyon shakedown of the NC1, I was actually very impressed. I thought it handled its weight admirably well. But now that I've just hopped out of the GT3 and back into this, let's see if I notice the difference. In terms of interior, it's not as timeless in terms of the design as the 991.1 generation. That being said, I think this interior gets way more flack than it deserves. It still has nice quality leather. The steering wheel feels excellent in the hand. It's really the switchgear, these buttons, that date it for me, and these relatively cheap feeling paddle shifters. We have these power adjustable seats. Unfortunately, they're not height adjustable, which is a big bummer because I'd like to sit a little bit lower, but they are extremely comfortable. The most comfortable seats of any car I've owned. We also have electric power steering here, a 9-speed dual clutch transmission versus the 7-speed in the GT3, adaptive dampers, carbon ceramic brakes, which were optional, and we have double wishbone front suspension, which should give this a slight advantage or at least negate some of the disadvantage from the weight compared to the GT3. I am running an older tire compound though, Michelin Pilot Super Sports, not nearly as sticky, not nearly as stiff of a sidewall compared to the Nanking CRSs, but for canyon driving, these should still do pretty well. We're gonna put it straight into track mode, and the reason I'm using track mode and not Sport Plus, track mode gives us the most aggressive super handling all-wheel drive, calibration, and VSA, or vehicle stability assist. We're not going to turn VSA fully off. It's already partially off in track mode by default. Oh, yeah, I do feel the extra weight. But the way this car pulls, it's on a slightly different level to the GT3, and it's mostly down to the instant electric torque. The top end power is still there though, even though this doesn't have a 9,000 RPM red line, only 7,500 here, it still pulls super hard to the top. If you can see the smile on my face, but I am having a great time. You know what? I actually kind of prefer this brake pedal. I know the NC1 brake pedal got a lot of flack when it first came out because it's not actually connected to the brakes physically. This is a fully digital brake pedal, and yet it has that initial bite that I'm looking for. Definitely feels softer than the GT3s, and we're in the stiffest setting here. Unfortunately, you cannot individually pick and choose your settings for the suspension, the steering, the VSA, the throttle response. All of it is tied to the drive modes here. So as you can see, we've got quiet mode, which turns the engine off at low speed or if you're idling. Sport ups the powertrain to the second out of the 4 settings. Sport Plus, which goes one level further, and then track. And there's no individual mode, unlike the new Civic Type R or my Integra Type S, which is a bummer, because personally I would like lighter steering, but still give me the most aggressive VSA and super handling all-wheel drive. And for certain roads, I might actually choose to go to the softest suspension setting. Unfortunately, it's all tied to these drive modes, and there's only 4 of them, and only 2 of them really do you want to use for aggressive driving, and both of them force you to have the stiffest damping. Oh yeah. weight. I definitely do feel the weight. It's definitely not a 3,200 pound car, but the way this super handling all-wheel drive with true torque vectoring combined with the torque of these electric motors, it just makes this car have a level of agility that you wouldn't expect looking at the specs. You do not drive a spec sheet. And for those of you who judge a car based on its specs, try to think a little bit more critically. If cars really just drove worse and worse based on the curb weight, doesn't that mean every modern car is worse than cars from 15, 20 years ago? Obviously, that's not the case. There are pros and cons. But I will say, in the last 10, 15 years, manufacturers have found ways to mask weight. And I think Acura has actually done a phenomenal job here. And I'm talking about canyon driving, right? At the limit, I don't know. I've seen some videos saying this car falls apart on the track. I will put that to the test myself when I get this car on track. But in the canyons, this is so good. Even though it's all-wheel drive, it still has some playfulness on throttle. They've tuned this super handling all-wheel drive not to just give you maximum traction everywhere, which it does give you a ton of traction, but it also still retains its rear biased nature. Wow. The steering is super quick, super precise, doesn't have a whole lot of feedback, but it's also not terrible. It's just not nearly on the level of the 991.1 GT3 in terms of feedback. Woo. Oh yeah, this car moves around. Oh my goodness. This car is so good to drive. I really mean that. I was actually quite nervous hopping into this car after experiencing, in my opinion, what is the gold standard sub $150,000 sports car, the 991.1 GT3, but this is pretty eye-opening. Even though this car is very different in terms of how it goes down a canyon road, it's really not any less enjoyable. It just gives you this level of confidence because of its technology, and that's what makes you smile. That's what makes you impressed at what this can do. That was my first launch control in this car, and I gotta say, it launches hard, but not like R35 GTR hard. It's a little bit more forgiving on the clutches. I think it relies a bit more on the electric motors and less on the massive clutch dump to get you off the line, which I'm okay with. A little bit of mechanical sympathy is good. After all, this is a Honda/Acura product. It's supposed to last a long time. Now, obviously, on the road, this car is far superior than the GT3. It's way more comfortable, way lower NVH levels, way less tire noise, and it rides much better. The seats are much more comfortable. I've spent time with GT3s on the road, and they are pretty harsh. And that's one of the reasons why I really like the NC1. It's a lot more forgiving as a street car. In fact, it's downright luxurious in terms of the ride quality and the level of noise. But what does that mean for driving dynamics? That comes at a price. That comes with compromise. All the extra weight, all the extra complexity of the all-wheel drive and the torque vectoring, the electric motors, the battery. It does make this car less analog than the GT3 by far. But again, does it make it less enjoyable to drive? It depends on what you're looking for in a driving experience. But for me, I am really enjoying just how different this feels. And it goes about tackling performance driving in a different way. This was totally unique back in the day. Obviously, the Porsche 918 Spyder did a lot of similar things, but at a much less accessible price point. The MSRP of this car was something like a quarter to a fifth the MSRP of the 918 Spyder. But overall, I'm just super impressed and happy that I own this car, and I cannot wait to put it to the test on track. So let me know what you think about this comparison, guys. I think ultimately for me, for my use case, which is primarily a road and canyon car versus a track car, the NC1 is by far the better car than the 991.1 GT3. But if you're looking for the analog thrills, if you're looking for something that you can do 10, 15, 20 track days a year with, the GT3 is the no-brainer choice, as long as you get that extended warranty for that engine. So big shout out to Karthik. Let me know what you think about this comparison. What other cars would you like to see compared against the NC1? Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, guys, moment of truth. I'm here to pick up my 2017 Acura NC1 NSX from detailership here in Dublin, California. This is Johnny here. How's it going? He did some touch up on some of the chips. Again, this is like an 8 to 9 year old car. Definitely was far from perfect. So he used some paint from Color Chip that I ordered, and then he did a full PPF. So I'm gonna reveal the car in just a second, but before we get into that, talk to me a little bit about why someone would want to go with PPF in the first place, because obviously it's quite a big investment.
Yeah, and it's a lot like if you were to just buy a phone, right? You spent $1,500 on the phone, get a nice phone case for it, it's about 5% of the cost. If you were to do 5% of the cost for a typical nice car, it really just takes one save for it to pay for itself. For example, if you have kids and they have bicycles and the door handle suddenly grazes the side of your door, protects it from that for the most part, and all you have to do is pull the film off, put a new piece on. Also, last week had a car that had a parallel parker graze the front of his bumper, completely saved the paint as well.
I mean, it also applies specifically for me on the track, right? Because I'm not going to be tracking this car full time, but of course I'm curious to take my first, modern supercar on track at least once. My Integra, I did not spend the time or money getting it PPF'd in advance. So like the front bumper, there's rock chips, there's melted rubber all over it. That's going to be really hard to get off.
That really is a prime example as well, especially if the car's a daily driver. Say you commute up and down 680 or up the 101 where it's always under construction. After 10, 15,000 miles, the front is completely peppered up. Film can really help minimize a lot of that type of damages. Right. And for a track car, all sorts of stuff flung up on your car, and if you're gonna go off, which you might, depending on the driver that you are.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood. It'll save you from kind of things like that as well. Obviously not bulletproof, but it can save you from a lot. It's kind of like if you went out into the sun and there's a lot of UV out there, you could really put on a shirt and it protects you from the sunburn, right? And then when you take off your shirt, your skin's all good. It's kind of where there's another route to go, ceramic coatings, where if you put a coating on, it's kind of like putting on sunscreen, whereas if you put film on the car, it's like putting on a shirt.
That's a really, really good analogy.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. I'm gonna start using that. So without further ado, I'm gonna show you guys the car. As you guys can see, not only is it PPF'd, but I chose to go with a 30% tint on the chrome beak, as they like to call it. And it really transforms the look of this car. The 2019 Plus model year NSX has that beak in body color. So 2019 version of this would have that in Valencia red. I actually quite like it with this. It has a little bit more of a subtle look to it.
Most people tend to do just the front of the car where your highest impacts are. So your hood, your bumper, the fenders, side mirrors. And a car like this, I usually recommend the rocker as well, just because every time you turn the steering wheel, the front wheel kicks up dirt and pebbles and sand and all that, and that back little rocker area gets completely peppered up. If it's a nicer car like this, it could become a future collector's car. Doing the whole car, you could probably get your RI on it as well. Price range is typically about anywhere between $2,000 and about $8,000, $9,000, depending on the size of the car, obviously. Average size car, about $6,000 to $8,000 for a full body paint protection film. Front end, it's around the $2,000 to $2,500. All right, well, if you would like to reach out to me, you can always find me on Detailership on Instagram at Detailership, www.detailership.com, or you can find me on the tracks. I don't go as much as I'd like to, but I met a lot of cool friends out there. I'm sure I'll see Vincent out there as well.